This is the review sheet for chapters 12 through 15 test. Question number 1, the main religion for the Mongolians was shamanism. This is the belief that a Khan could speak to an ultimate god who is often represented as sky or heaven. The Mongolians were tolerant of other religions. Some Khans even converted to Islam or Buddhism. Question number 2, the reasons for the Mongolian supremacy would be the horse, the bows that they used, iron weapons, things like the sword, the lance, javelin, mace, the use of non-Mongolians in the army, and the fear tactics that they used. Question 3, the problems that the Russians faced under Mongolian rule were high taxes, the failed attempt at paper money introduced by the Mongolians, and then a return to a direct exchange of goods instead of purchasing things with currency. Number 4, under Mongolian control, China became known as the Yin Empire. And during this time period, Confucianist exams went away. Mongolians united a fragmented China. There was forced migration, constant warfare, heavy taxes, and a promotion of Chinese trade. Number 5, the key changes that the Ming brought when they got the Mongolians out of power. Relations with Central Asia and the Middle East were cut off. Strict restrictions on imports were put in place. Foreign visitors instituted. Silver replaced paper money. Zhenghi's voyages mainly took place from 1405 to 1433. This Chinese explorer's father was a Muslim, and so he had a good knowledge of the Middle East. He went to the Persian Gulf, he went to the Swahili coast, he set up tributary states, collected taxes. Their boats were over 300 feet long. They were called treasure ships, these junks. Many of his voyages carried over 27,000 men. These voyages did not continue because the Ming didn't want to have close contacts with these barbarians from the outside, and so they decided to focus on internal problems that they were facing, specifically Mongolians trying to re-attack the Chinese. And so Emperor Yongle was the one who really promoted these voyages, and so it could have been a personal project of his, and it just didn't continue long into the Ming. Question number 7 is the Yi Kingdom. This is Korean Kingdom. They denied Mongolian rule. They revived Confucianism in the Yi Kingdom. Confucius learning, movable type. They come up with an accurate calendar. Cotton becomes very important in the Yi Kingdom, so important that you could actually pay your taxes with cotton. And cotton was the favorite fabric of the Korean elite. Question 8 looks at the Mongolian attack on China. I think it should be the Mongolian attack on Japan. The Mongolian attack on Japan was a failure. A storm prevented them from being successful. The Japanese spent a lot of money fortifying their borders as a result of the Mongolians' attempt to attack them. 9 is similarities between Mali and Delhi. Trade was important to both. They patterned their lifestyles on the seasons. They had village lifestyles. People farmed, fished, and herded, and both were Islamic empires. Question 10, how was India easily invaded by the Turkish? The Gupta Empire was very fragmented, making it easier to attack. You may also want to look at page 382 for a little more information about that. Question 11, the technologies on the Indian Ocean, the stern-mounted rudder, the compass, the junk, some non-technological things that were going on. Mongolian collapse disrupted land trade, and so that's going to increase trade on the Indian Ocean. There was an increase for demand of luxury goods, and other things like that were taking place. Question 12, the collapse of Great Zimbabwe. It was an ecological crisis from deforestation and overgrazing. More information about that on page 388 you may want to look over. Question number 13, how did the spread of Islam into India differ from that of Africa? In India, it was done by force, and so in North Africa, it was more peaceful. Question 14, the role of women in tropical India and Africa. In India, sati became optional, but women's powers were still suppressed. in both India and Africa. Women could do the cooking, the raising of the children, the farming, the weaving, making clothing, and the creation of clay pots. And so they did have specific jobs that they did. Question 15, give a detailed account of the cause and effects of the Black Death. The Mongolians brought it from Asia. The effects were mainly that it ended serfdom because the laborers could demand higher taxes, the laborers could demand higher pay. And the peasants began to revolt because they realized that they were becoming more valuable because there was less peasants to do the work. 16 talks about the result of the rise of commerce and merchant banking in the late Middle Ages. Milling and ironwork grow, urban areas grow, urban areas offered more social freedoms. Most Jewish people lived in cities. Cities could adapt to the changing market conditions. So cities became more of a desirable place to live. There was an increase in checking accounts, investments, and loans that were all created during this time period. So banking becomes a more prominent industry. Question 17, several key aspects of Judaism and Christianity. Jews faced a lot of persecution. The Black Death was blamed on them. Spanish expels the Jews from the Iberian Peninsula. And so the only safe place really during this time period for the Jews was Papal Rome, because Roman Catholicism in Rome began to offer some protection to the Jews. Question 18, what are some changes in the Latin West due to the Renaissance? Huge artistic growth. Humanism, be familiar with that term. Scholasticism, that's another term that you want to know. Universities are going to be created that are going to help increase literacy and learning and knowledge. When we get down, let me scroll down here a little bit. Looking at question 19, explain the state and the importance of the Magna Carta. Explain and state the importance of the Magna Carta for question number 19. It literally means the Great Charter, and it made monarchs subject to the law. It confirmed the independence of the church in London. It guaranteed noble hereditary rights. 20, give an account of the 100 Years' War. Basically what's happening, France's kings and vassals are waging war against the English that are trying to exert authority and control over France. Be familiar with Joan of Arc during this time period. One of the results of this is that it's going to result in more clearly defined boundaries in Europe. 21 looks at new monarchs. New monarchs, primary nations were England, France, and Spain. It's increasing centralized powers. It increases control over noble families, relies on full-time armies paid through taxes. So these new monarchs are making some changes to the way governance is done in Europe. 22 lists some Viking accomplishments. They used the stars and ocean currents to navigate. They explored Newfoundland. 23, why did the Iberian Peninsula lead to maritime exploration? What made them so successful? The marriage of Ferdinand and Isabel helped unite Spain, and this is going to make Spain more powerful. And so they're going to promote a lot of these voyages. There's a desire for sub-Saharan gold, and then they also want to find a passage to Asia around the Muslims. So they're looking for a way to get to Asia without having to go through the Middle East. Question 24 lists the accomplishments of these following individuals. Diaz sailed around the Cape of Good Hope. Magellan was the first to sail around the world. Columbus is accredited with the discovery of the New World. Prince Henry the Navigator is the main promoter of exploration. Vasco da Gama sails around Africa to India and back. And Amerigo Vespucci is the first to really say, hey, this new area that we're in is not Asia, it's something else. And so America is actually named after him. 25, explain Portuguese relations between Benin and the Congo. Benin refused to accept Catholicism, and the closing of the slave trade is something else to note there. 26, how did the Portuguese benefit from their Indian Ocean trade domination? A lot of profit, charging lower prices for spices because they had more of them, little impact on Africa and the Asian mainland. And the last question here, give an account of the two most famous conquistadors. Cortez had an alliance with a group of Native Americans, and he's actually going to be the one who's accredited with bringing an end to the Aztecs. There are horses that are used, firearms, smallpox. These are all things that are going to aid Cortez into being successful. So the alliance I was talking about was with a group of people that were the enemies of the Aztecs. That he had an alliance with that helped take the Aztecs out. And then the other famous conquistador would be Pizarro, and he's accredited with defeating the Incas. And he only had 180 men when he did it. There was a civil war going on in the Andes amongst the Incas, which made it very easy for the Spanish to defeat them. The cannons that the Spanish used caused a lot of confusion. And so with all those negative things happening with the Incas, 180 Spanish were able to defeat an army of 40,000 Incas. So that is not exhaustive. That's to get you on the right track. So you are going to want to do some research on your own, look into some of those things a little more. It'd probably be good to crack open the book, go through the chapter a little bit, delve in just a little deeper to some of those questions. Your essays, let me just go ahead and tell you what these are going to be. 2 comparatives. You're going to choose 1 comparative and 1 continuity and change over time to write a thesis statement. I think I said essay. What I meant was to write a thesis statement. So the comparatives that you're going to have to choose from, compare the social, political, and economic characteristics of Mali and Delhi. And so I don't think I'm going to let my class do that one because they just wrote an essay on that. So for my class, the one comparative that you have to do is compare the Iberian Peninsula's sponsored voyages and expeditions of the 15th and the 16th century to the voyages and expeditions sponsored by the Chinese in the 15th century. So Drag may let his students choose one of those 2 comparatives. My students have to do the comparative between the Iberian Peninsula voyages to Chinese voyages. Continuity and change over time. The choices here are describe the social, political, and economic continuities and changes over time between the years 1271, which was the founding of the Yin Empire, and 1433, which is the end of Zheng He's voyages in the Ming Empire in China. The other continuity and change over time that my students can choose is describe the social, political, and economic continuities and changes over time in the Latin West between the years 1200 to 1500. Hope you study a lot, and good luck on your test.